This episode of Reasonably Spontaneous Conversation is brought to you in part by Clay Boykin Life and Business Coaching, because we all get stuck at times. For more information, visit clayboykin.com. By Janelli Bean, for fun and engaging children's books with cute and colorful characters. For more information, visit janellibean.com. And by Wise Owl Organizing, simply set up for you. Organizing consulting and clarity coaching, virtual or in person. For more information, visit wiseowlorganizing.com.
Hello, world. It's me, Dennis, and welcome to another episode of Reasonably Spontaneous Conversation. I'm here with another person from my hometown of Victoria, Texas, Greg Verrett. Hey, Greg.
Hey, Dennis. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. We're both... I was stunned when Janelle Sarles, our producer, introduced me to your art. And it was just so realistic and so the work that you've done. And we're going to get a chance to show some of the art on the show and to highlight that. But I'd like to know a little bit about your background. How did you get into art? How did you get into this idea of drawing and bringing this forward?
Well, I guess I could trace back. My dad was always he was a really good doodler, with art, pen and ink, things like that. I used to watch my older brother. I'm the youngest of 8. I used to watch my older brother, Joel. He was a very good artist. As a matter of fact, he would just doodle all the time. And I would start, patterning some of the things that I was doing after what he was doing. And I drew through elementary, through high school. I had a scholarship to study art when I graduated high school. There in Victoria. I didn't take it though. My heart was with the military, especially the Marine Corps.
What year was this?
That was 82. I graduated in 1982.
All right. So 82, and why the military? What was the thing that impelled you for that?
I've always just been a very patriotic kind of individual. My father served in the military. My grandfather served in the military, and it was just something I felt compelled to do. I was the youngest of 8. I also had an older brother who was in the military, and I followed that dream. That's what I wanted to be, was just a United States Marine. I accomplished that, married my high school sweetheart in the process, and we embarked on a adventure around the world for the next 10 years, at least, with the Marine Corps. And at that point, my art really stopped. I didn't do
any artwork. How did you? Why would you? How would you be able to stop something like that? When I look at art, and when I look at your art, I mean, there's something very primal about it, that it's like it says you. How were you able to stop that?
Well, with responsibilities of as a Marine, being stationed in different locations, trying to be the best at my job that I could be, always ready to moment's notice to go anywhere, along with my wife, and raising 3 children, didn't find any time to continue with my art. So everything just was put on hold for the next 10 years. And then to go even further than that, when I got out of the Marine Corps, I ended up joining the Texas Army National Guard, and I was put on full-time service with the National Guard, and I served for another 17 years. So I did 27 years total in the military, combined service, and I never did any artwork during that time. When I finally retired in 2009, my wife, Sandy, she just said, you need a hobby. So why don't you go back to school, like you should have done when you had your scholarship, and study art. So I said, okay, we'll do that. So kind of on a whim, I just decided to go to art school, and went to art school in San Antonio and graduated from that, actually with a degree in a Bachelor of Science in Animation Technology. So 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional animation is what I got my degree in. But that actually sparked the old kindred spirit to go back to fine art. And so I still do 2-dimensional type of artwork, but I spend most of my time, the vast majority, working on fine art, pen and ink, watercolors, oils, things of this nature. Colored pencil is also really what I'm really focused on at the moment.
Wonderful. Well, let's take a look at some of your art so that we can, and your much of your art is inspired. Like, for example, we talk about the one that you did with John Wayne, right? And so I want to see a little bit about that. Tell me about this. Tell me about this piece, because it's just
Well,
the inspiration and how you built that
sure,
up.
sure. Well, that one in general is a large one. It's about 18 by 24 inches.
Mm-hmm.
What motivated me was just being patriotic, especially in the current climate of the world these days. But I've always had a drawing towards the United States Marine Corps, but all branches of service, really. But being a Marine is just near and dear to my heart. I've always had a fondness for John Wayne movies. That goes back to my father. He and I would watch John Wayne movies all the time. We'd go as a young child there in Victoria to the old Uptown Theater and watch movies there, which is no longer there. But and we watched John Wayne movies all the time. It was something close that he and I had together. Him being the youngest son in his family, me being his youngest son. So that's really what sparked it. I wanted to do a John Wayne piece, and that was the first John Wayne piece I've done. I'll probably have subsequent ones, in the future.
Ones that you want to do. Greg, I find it interesting. I mean, I look at the amount of detail that you do and the amount of depth that you have there in the work. I mean, what did your professors tell you when you were at art school?
Well, I was the grand old man, I guess you'd say, going to art school, because you go to art school. I graduated in 2017. Quite a few years back. But all the other students were young, out of high school, early 20s. We might have had one in their 30s or so. And here I am in my 50s, and I'm going through art school. And they were like, we haven't seen that technique in a long time. Even though it had been dormant in me for decades, I just kind of picked up where I left off. And they said, people don't draw like that anymore, or we don't see that a lot. So a lot of my professors, they appreciated what I was doing, and I was able to kind of help some of the younger men and women in my classes on some older techniques that aren't really utilized.
What are the techniques? Well, explain that to me a little deeper.
Well, I'm really drawn towards pen and ink, the high level of detail. And I guess I got that from reading comic books in my younger days and following some of my favorite comic book artists, which would have been Barry Windsor Smith from Marvel, Bernie Wrightson, who, they did amazing detail in pen and ink. But back then, the pen and ink style was to use a quill and an actual bottle of ink. That's how they applied their artwork. Very organic. And nowadays, it's not done that way. Nowadays, comic book artists will use what's called a fine point disposable pen. Back when Barry Windsor Smith or Bernie Wrightson was doing, or some of these early comic book artists like Jack Kirby, many people will recognize that name. Yeah. I mean, they used a quill and an ink bottle, and that's how they did their ink. So that's what I remember doing. So here I am going to school now, in the mid-late 2000s, and I'm using an old technique, and they're like, people don't do that anymore.
Wow.
And so it's like, well, it's still part of what I've always been raised to do.
Can you do digitally? Can you do digitally what you do with a pen?
Yes, but it's not as organic. Digitally, it's fine. That's what I'm trained to do. That's why I got my degree, in digital art. But and you can create your own brushes and digital artwork and something that can mimic a pen, a quill, pretty close. And the difference is through digital, you can always go back and correct your mistakes.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're really doing it as a traditional artist, once that pen touches that paper and that ink touches that paper, it's done.
Yeah.
You might be able to go back and, cover it with another color, like white it out, but you'll always
But do you get the same? I mean, when I write with a fountain pen, I get a different that drag that is against the paper gives me a different stroke than what it is with a gel pen. Or is that the same thing with a brush or a stylus?
I would have to say no. There's a lot of variables in there. You're getting into the real specifics of the nib.
The nib, exactly.
On the stylus, like here's my stylus with my Wacom tablet, which I keep handy, and that's my Wacom tablet that I use for digital art when I'm doing graphic designs for other people.
Right.
But the nib, you're bound to the point of the nib, and you get different size nibs, of course.
Sure.
But it's not quite the same. Plus, you have to. Your hand-eye coordination has to be, I'm drawing here, but I'm looking on my screen. So your hand-eye coordination has to be fluid. And it just takes a lot of practice. Now
it's not like rewiring the brain to do that.
Yes.
All right.
There are other Wacom tablets where you actually draw on the screen, but those are high dollar pieces, and I'm not set up to, financially, get into something like that. So I'm an old school, Wacom tablet, electric stylus, and it just takes a lot of hand and eye coordination.
So
but
how long?
Digital art.
All right, let's take a look at Evil at your Evil World. What inspired that?
Well, I grew up, in the late '60s, early '70s, at a very difficult time, in the United States, recession and all that stuff, and Evel Knievel comes along, and he just, kind of injects his American patriotism, in America. And as a young kid, very impressionable, just kind of, he was kind of like a Captain America figure. And so I always grew up fascinated with Evel Knievel. I have an Evel Knievel doll, motorcycle and action figure up here as part of my motivational wall. But also during that time, the reason I called it Evil World was because in the 70s, and I'm drawn to the 70s. That's when I grew up. There was a movie that came out called Westworld with Yul Brynner. And there was another subsequent movie after that. But it's about sentient robots, or robots that become sentient. It's a recreational getaway, but these robots become sentient. And they start taking over. Well, anyway, I got to thinking, well, what if the reason why Evel Knievel survived all those horrendous crashes that took the lives of so many other stunt devils out there?
Yep.
Because I've seen other motorcycle stunt devils who died,
absolutely,
in trying to do what Evel Knievel did. And he survived them all. Well, what if he was a robot? And so that's why I patterned Evil World, and the pose that Evil's in my artwork is the exact same pose that Yul Brynner is in the famous movie poster. So I just patterned it after that.
Now, in order to support yourself as an artist, tell me how you do that. So here you have this tremendous artwork. You have the world that is waiting to be able to do, to be able to touch and to be able to know this, especially the people that are very interested in the 70s in that area. How do you reach them?
Facebook is really my primary methodology of doing that. I'm a product of the 60s and 70s. I'm not very technically savvy. I can learn it, but I spend so much time working on artwork or other areas in my life that, trying to spend a lot of time learning about Instagram or Etsy or this or that. It's just, it's overwhelming. So the really only avenue that I utilize is Facebook. So I have military sites that I'm a part of my groups, and other families and friends and other associates that on Facebook. And so I'll put out a piece of artwork that I've just completed, hey, just completed this piece. And I'll usually include with that the finished product, but I'll also include processes along the way, like sketching it out and going in and actually working with a pen and working with the ink or working with the colors. And also it'll be a step-by-step process. So they can actually see that this isn't something he created digitally, you know. He's actually, I see what he's doing. He's actually applying the ink to the paper or the color to the paper. And so I want them to be able to see, well, if I like it, first of all, if it appeals to me and I want to buy that, I see what this gentleman did through the whole process of creating that piece of art. And so that's usually how I put it on Facebook. And I have, limited. I might sell the original. I might, but most often I'll sell a print or two, maybe three. But then the general, people are so busy in their life that they'll just like, that's gone. Next, I want to see something new. So
exactly on how, but this is again the laws of large numbers. Be able to get as many people. This is why I want to get a chance to be able to do this, because I know that you're going local to global, right? I mean, like you're starting. You and I, growing up in Victoria, there was the Victoria High School, which were the Stingarees. They are no longer that. So right. You're building into the nostalgia market by recreating those kind of work.
Yeah, I created a website which I created a bunch of digital T-shirt designs, coffee mugs, stickers, things of this nature, all various apparel, hats, so forth and so on. With the title of my company business is called Stingaree Culture, because we were a culture. The Stingaree, what a lot of people don't realize is, the high school was built in 1958. And ended in the year 2000. But actually, Patty Welder started the Stingarees, and that actually started in the year 1920.
Yep.
So the Stingaree, as a mascot for Victoria, is well over 100 years old. Wow. And it left a lot of when they took that away arbitrarily, in my opinion, my humble opinion. When they took that away, it hurt a lot of people's feelings. Not just the Victoria High School Stingarees, but the Stroman Raiders, which were the other high school in the area. There's not a lot of happy feelings or emotions about those two schools being taken away, and no one had any say so in it. So I created Stingaree Culture, and I have a Facebook page, and I have a online store called StingareeCulture.com, where people can go and they can peruse through, and if they're so inclined, they can purchase a piece of nostalgia, a piece of
wonderful.
So I think the designs are pretty good.
What's next on the palette of Greg Verrett?
Just continuing my fine art commissions. If people are interested in commissions, they can always contact me to do commission work. I do a lot of wildlife art. I don't just center around military. I know that we sent you a lot of military photos of my artwork.
Oh no!
But I do wildlife as well.
Well, I mean, you have some dinosaurs. You have some dinosaur relatives that you have on there that with the chickens, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, when I look at them, I can see the raptors. I can just see the raptors in them, and so clearly, that people say, well, the dinosaurs are extinct. No, they're not. These are the descendants of the dinosaurs right there.
I do a lot of wildlife. I love wildlife. My dad got me involved in wildlife art. He was a big fan of Ducks Unlimited. I studied a lot of Ducks Unlimited artwork when I was a young man growing up. And so I've always been drawn to, especially fowl, birds, things of this nature. I love the detail in the quills. It's just, I try to focus a lot of attention on that. Try to get, people, I want to create a sense of interest in the artwork. So that it's not just, they're chickens. Well, if you look closely, if you really get it close, you're not only going to see the quills, you're going to see the barbs in the quills.
Exactly.
And so the same thing with the chicken wire behind them. It's a rusty chicken wire. I try to put as much realism as I can into it. I'm not really into.
I see even the broken one. There's even a broken wire there. Oh, that is
no such thing as perfect chicken wire. I mean, especially here in Texas, it's going to be broken. It's going to, be subject to decay and things of that nature. So I try to include that in all my artwork, something unique to give the eye some interest.
Well, I would love, Greg, I'm so grateful to meet you now, because one of the things that I'm seeing is that we're getting an opportunity now in 2022 to have people to connect artists to the artist and their art to their customers in ways that we never were able to do before. And so my opportunity to be able to, I'm so grateful that Janelle introduced us so that I could get a chance to be able to see, because this is a time of creation. I mean, you're seeing yourself grow as an artist, aren't you?
Oh, yeah. Even though I picked up where I left off, and there was about 3 decades there of non-activity, I'm a much better artist now than I was when I graduated high school. I think a lot of it has to do with maturity and being, traveling the world and seeing things that most people aren't subject to. Sometimes it's the cruelty of man. Sometimes it's the greatness of man. And I think I try to bring that into a piece of artwork that I'm doing, the emotional element of it, and not just a piece of, oh, well, there's a bird, or there's a soldier, there's a Marine, there's this character or that character. I try to bring an element of emotion into it.
You do, and that's what that was what was so clear to me when I saw your pieces, that there was feeling. You could see a feeling there, and a real pleasure to not get the opportunity to be able to visit with you today, Greg, and to see exactly what another artist is doing. And I look forward to, there will be links on the show to be able to get them to your work. And I look forward to getting a chance to publicize that and to see what else is going on in your future and to remain connected.
Well, it's my pleasure, Dennis. I really do appreciate you taking the time to enter my room and, my art studio and talk to me about, my past. I really do appreciate it. I appreciate everything that you're doing.
You bet. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another episode of Reasonably Spontaneous Conversation with Greg Verrett. I'm Dennis Tardon, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, Dennis.